There was just a vote in the House of Commons to reaffirm support for the Paris Agreement and to reaffirm Canada's ongoing commitment to implementing the Paris Agreement. Now, the Paris Agreement is the UN global warming, globalist wealth redistributionist scheme that the Liberals have repeatedly used to justify their nationwide carbon tax and their seemingly never-ending attacks on Alberta's economy. Now, this is the text of the Liberal motion brought forward by Bardish Chagger. It reads that, in the opinion of the House, climate change is a global problem that requires a global solution, and that, despite the withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Agreement, Canada remain committed to the implementation of the agreement as it is in the best interest of all Canadians. Now, that last part is really the most important part, but it's also the most sinister part, where it reads, Canada remain committed to the implementation of the agreement as it is in the best interest of all Canadians, because how the Liberals are implementing the Paris Agreement is through their carbon tax. The Paris Agreement is the accord they think gives them the social license for their job-killing carbon tax. So, to support the Liberal version of the implementation of the Paris Agreement is to give your support to the carbon tax. That's what that motion means. Now, the Paris Agreement, it's already been ratified by the Liberals. There was really no need to bring forward this new motion now, except for sleazy, cheap politics. It was a jab at our closest ally, Donald Trump, for just having withdrawn from the Paris Accord. It was a complete and total abandonment of Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall, who's fighting this carbon tax with everything he's got. And it was a way for the Liberals to test the new Conservative Party, to prove that Conservatives like being liked by the media and their enemies, which are so often the same thing, more than they actually like being Conservatives. And the Liberals were right. Conservatives actually went along to support the Paris Agreement. And new leader Andrew Scheer, well, he made sure they did. The vote was whipped hard, meaning the MPs were strongly leaned upon to support the party line of a yes vote, or they would face consequences. If Scheer had campaigned on supporting the Paris Agreement, you and I both know he would not be leader right now. He barely won by a fraction of a percentage as it was. Now, every single Conservative MP that was there in the House who stood to vote, voted for this motion, except for Cheryl Gallant, the Conservative MP from the Ontario riding of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke. Hers was a defiant and brave no. It took an Ontario Conservative MP to go down swinging for Alberta. And Cheryl will likely pay a huge political price with her party for her principled stance for all of us. And it was shocking, just shocking and gross to see the excuses roll in. The Conservatives excused their support of the Paris Agreement by saying the motion was just meaningless political gamesmanship from the Liberals. It was a non-binding motion, shenanigans, a stunt, a trick that meant nothing. If it were indeed all those things, then that's actually an argument not to vote for it, but even that's not true. Even if the vote was purely symbolic, it meant something. It meant the Conservatives, with their brand new leader, Andrew Scheer, were stabbing their committed voters in the back instead of standing on principle the very first time they were put to the test. And you know what else? Voting for something you disagree with for purely symbolic reasons is exactly how Alberta got Rachel Notley. It doesn't work out well. And I'm a woman of my word, so if you follow me on Twitter, you know I promised these Conservative MPs before they voted that I would name and shame them and read every name of each and every Conservative MP from Alberta who supported this motion to affirm the commitment to implement the Liberals' version of the Paris Accord. So here it goes. I enjoy absolutely none of this. I feel betrayed by them, like I'm sure so many of you do. So listen for your MP. The yes votes were John Barlow, Martin Shields, Michael Cooper, Earl Dreeshen, Jim Aglinski, Garnet Jennis, Rachel Harder, Zaid Abultaif, Mike Lake, Ron Leipert, Kelly McCauley, Glenn Motz, Shannon Stubbs, Chris Workington, Pat Kelly. All of these Conservatives regularly rail against Rachel Notley for her carbon tax, and they just affirm support for the very agreement that justifies the federal one. Now, here are the people who were not present to stand to vote. Ronna Ambrose, Deepak Obrai, David Yurdega, Matt Genereux, Tom Kamich, Kevin Sorensen, Arnold Viersen, Carrie Diot, Blake Richards, and Michelle Rempel, who furiously debated against this motion and left, so she couldn't be forced to vote in favor of the motion or be forced to abstain. And then the abstainers, they were present, but they chose not to rise from their seat to vote. There was Len Weber, Blaine Calkins, Stephanie Cusey, and Bob Benson. That's all of them. I can't explain to you how much I hate doing this today. I like so many of these people, both politically and personally, especially the younger ones, the rookies. Some of them are very, very good blue Tories, and I was happy that the Conservative Party's future, the party that I need to be around for my kids, was in the hands of these bright young people. But that's also why I'm so disappointed and honestly angry. These are smart people who violated their own values, their own conscience, and the trust of their constituents to gain favor with people who will never vote for them anyway. I mean, if you look at the online reaction, Conservative voters are livid. And Liberals and NDPers, well, they're celebrating, and why wouldn't they be? They just got 2 wins. They made the Conservatives compromise their values, and they drove a wedge in between the party and their grassroots. And the Conservatives, deep in the throes of their Ottawa-Stockholm syndrome, were all too happy to go along with it. And that's why it has to be me. It has to be all of us, normal mainstream Conservatives, who call them out for this utter betrayal and hold them to account. It means more when a friend and an ally is throwing a bucket of cold water in your face to bring you back to reality. It also means we have to rally around that one brave dissenter who put people and principle over party politics. We have to rally around Cheryl Gallant. We can even support most of the abstainers too, but not all. Stay tuned. In the coming days, I'm going to point out a couple of real disappointments, the ones that were hardest for me to watch from the Conservative yes votes. The Conservatives thought they could vote for this and no one would even notice or care. Well, they sure misjudged us. We care a lot. And now it's our job to make sure they never do it again. If we wanted Liberal policies, well, we'd vote Liberal. We need better Conservatives who don't forget who sent them to Ottawa and why they are there. Political parties run on donations and volunteers. I know, I've driven in more parades than I care to remember, and I get all the same emails as you do asking for cash. But I'm asking you to do something different. I'm asking you to make a pledge and stand up for yourself. Go to backstabbers.ca. Yeah, that's backstabbers.ca, because that's exactly what happened to us here. And sign the pledge that I have. Until the Conservative Party of Canada renounces its support for the UN's Paris Agreement on global warming, they will not get any more of my donations or any more of my volunteer time, because they don't deserve those things from me. I'm doing something our Conservatives wouldn't do, and I'm making a stand on my principles. I'm sticking up for the grassroots, and I hope you do too. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunreid. Go to backstabbers.ca and make the pledge that you won't give the Conservative Party any more of your time or your money until they renounce the Paris Agreement.